All right, everybody. I'm back for a look at some of my records that I'm selling. If you've seen my previous broadcast, I was going from A through F, I believe. I already did my soundtracks. So now I'm going to continue from G till N, I think. That's already still a pretty good chunk. So I'm going to try to keep this to an hour. If you're having any problems hearing me, let me know. I should be able to see the chat now and talk to everybody. So just leave me a message in the chat if the sound is good. And this should be streaming from the video that I put up as an advanced preview from a week ago. I finally figured out how to do this properly. Can you check if it's working? Do you see this?
I do see it.
Can you leave a message? Just want to see if this is coming in on the chat. I'm actually using my PC to stream this. Usually I use the iPad, go direct. And but I finally figured out how to use this with OBS software. So I also have a microphone here. You can't really see it unless I push down here, and there it is. It's a Blue Yeti microphone, and this was graciously donated to me by Clive, who has been watching my videos. And I think on the last video, he mentioned the sound was not that good. So, you know, the way it usually works with these live streams is you go live, everybody can partake in the chat, and then after it's finished, it starts processing and it uploads to YouTube. Sometimes that takes like 24 to 48 hours before it even processes properly. And during that broadcast, I was just using the mics of the iPad, and he said that he could barely hear me. Now, I didn't hear too many complaints, but I did pay attention to that, and I listened back to it, and I was not that impressed with the sound either. So we were talking over emails, and he mentioned that he had a Blue Yeti mic that he doesn't use, and that he would be happy to send it to me. And I was like, wow, fantastic. I'm happy to try it out. Because I don't usually do a lot of live streams. I usually make pre-made jams, you know, where they're all properly recorded, and then I make the video and add effects, and then I publish it. So the streaming thing is something I only do occasionally. You know, it's maybe been once every couple of weeks doing blog updates and so forth. But now I'm going through my records, so I thought it'd be even better if I have proper sound. And so that's what I'm doing now, is to go through my records, and it's going to sound much better. From what I've heard from this mic, it's definitely going to sound better than the way I was doing it before, and using the phone or the iPad. So let's start off now with, I want to again thank Clive for that generous donation of sending me the mic. And it took me a while to get it going because I had to buy some adapters to get them. This thing doesn't work directly with an old iPad Pro with the C hookup, the USB-C. It wouldn't connect. It would connect to the phone. So now I had to get connected to the PC, and then use my software, and also running the GoPro here as a cam, as usual. So I probably have about an hour, 15 minutes max before this battery runs out. So let's get right to the albums. And I'm going to start off with again, we're going from G. So this is a big one here. This is 24 Groovy Greats. Now this may be the only album I have left from my father. This is an album that he bought in the 60s. I'm guessing this is came out around 66, 67. There is no date on it. And, you know, there's a description on the back. But we heard this a lot as kids. It's funny that they have the 3 kids here drawn on this. because I had to, my brother and sister. My sister was younger, and my other brother, my brother is younger than me. So we were kind of in the same situation. We all listened to this album, and then here's the picture of these three kids on there. So it kind of fit our family as well. But this was huge for me. It's got a lot of classic 50s and up to mid 60s songs on here. I particularly, there's a sync issue with audio video. Okay. I don't know what's going on there. Are you having a sync issue?
I'm not listening.
Well, you have, listen.
Yeah, there's an issue.
So where's the lag? What, are my lips moving before that you hear the vocals or what? I can try go into settings and fix this, but it can be difficult to get that set up right. Yeah, I don't know. I may not be able to fix this. How bad is it?
I can't make it out.
Are my lips not matching? See, I'm only watching this on a monitor, so I can't see exactly what is going on live because it doesn't even show here on my channel what is going on.
Maybe you have to start it over.
Yeah, well, this is the problem. If I can't see what exactly is happening. Okay, I've got it going here now. Let's see what happens. Okay, I've got it going here now. Let's see. Yeah, I don't know. I'm going to fix that. I could just go into settings here and check if there's something I can fix on audio. So I'm just going to continue. So 24 Groovy Greats have some great songs on here, like A Fool in Love by Ike and Tina Turner. That was a big one for me. And I think that was the major one. Ike and Tina Turner, as well as James Brown, Papa's Got a Brand New Bag. I absolutely loved this album and the variety of songs and groups on here. So this really got me into the 60s music that my dad was playing all the time. So I've held on to this from his collection. And this is actually really good condition. So that's my first one. Music that my dad was playing all the time. So I've held on to this from his collection. This is actually really good condition. So that's my first one. All right, next up we've got David Gilmour, his first solo album from 1978. This is a classic. It came out between Pink Floyd, Animals, and The Wall. And of his solo albums is generally considered, I think, his best one. He didn't have a lot. I think he's had maybe 4 or 5. But I've jammed to some of these songs on the street. His next album after this was 1984. That was already years after Floyd broke up. So, again, these albums are all in like near mint condition. And this would be his second solo album, About Face. This came out in 84. Great album. I mean, it sounds like Floyd. I mean, it's David Gilmour, so what do you expect? Here's a group that I picked up in 1980, when I was in my looking for heavy guitar phase. This is Girl School. They were a British all-female group, and they influenced a lot of female groups in the 80s. One of the first ones that was actually this heavy and had a really good guitar player. You know, it wasn't just like a joke like the Go-Go Girls or Bananarama in the guitar department. This woman, I think her name was Kelly Johnson, great guitar player. And I was really impressed when I heard this the first time. And she died, I don't know, at least 15 years ago. I can't remember what it was from, but she got sick, and she had already left the band, I think, by the mid-'80s, and they had gotten, various other guitar players to try and take her place. And this was Girl School's, one of their follow-up albums from 1983. And that's a UK edition, again, so I don't think it's been played more than once, because I always recorded everything onto cassette and then filed the albums away. I also have a single from them. There's, I think, 5 songs on here. I think they did a cover of ZZ Top Tush, and that got some airplay on the radio. Next group up is a Canadian classic. Probably many of you have not heard of this group. Goddo, formed by the bass player singer Greg Godovitz. And this is their first album, Gatefold. They didn't really become known until the second album. This one came out in '77. This is on Polydor. So that was a power trio. And their second album was the classic, which is Goddo, if it is indeed lonely at the top, it's lonely at the bottom too. Who cares? And a friend of mine, Steve, had turned me on to this album because he had it. And it's a classic. It's got some great songs in there, some raunchy lyrics. Well, I'll just show you the titles on here. If we can straighten this out here. Camera. Oh, Carol, Kiss My Whip, classic. And you can see what's on side 1 there, the second track. But this is absolute classic. It's funny and great riffs, and they never again matched this album. Their third album was An Act of Goddo in '79. This still had some good songs on it, but I would say it was not as consistently heavy as the previous album. And then I don't think they really lasted much longer after this. They kind of broke up and then reformed again for reunion tours years later. So here's a classic from ex-members of 10cc. It's the L album. And I believe that was the first album from Kevin Cream, Lol Cream and Kevin Godley, who had left 10cc in 1976. I believe. And, it sounds like 10cc because they were, all 4 members of 10cc were all singing and playing. So when you hear these guys, you think, it's 10cc. It's quite an amazing band of, to have all 4 musicians on such a high level of musical ability, songwriting, and vocal skills. It's almost unheard of. In a group. Usually there's one person or maybe 2 that stand out from the rest. But here it was like a 4-way split between all members. Absolutely one of the greatest art rock bands of all time. Sheet Music from 10cc is still one of my favorite Desert Island albums. So they did lots of albums afterwards, and 10cc also continued for years. Here's another classic I bought in '84. It's Sammy Hagar, Neil Schon, Kenny Aronson, and Michael Shreve, ex-drummer from Santana. This was called Through the Fire, and this was so refreshing to hear, especially for Neil Schon, because he had been in Journey for years and playing a lot of, radio-friendly melodic rock, and he really got to cut loose on this album and get heavy. And I was amazed when I heard it. I was like, wow, I don't hear him play like that in Journey. I mean, it was, you hearing, what was the big song? Don't Stop Believing? Was that the Journey song? Mm-hmm. Don't Stop Believing. Yeah, and that's what you were used to hearing from Neil Sean. So this was really great to hear, and I don't think it really sold. It's basically a live performance, um, and it was going to be, they're promoting it as the next supergroup, but it didn't last. Sammy Hagar then went on a year later to join Van Halen, and but still a classic album. One of probably my favorite thing that Sammy Hagar ever did. Next up, I got Randy Hansen, Hendrix impersonator extraordinaire. He released this album in 1980. It was never on CD. It's a great album. It's unfortunately he never continued writing his own music, because I thought this stuff was fine. I think he was embarrassed by it. He refused to play it years later, or didn't even want to talk about it. But I would definitely say there was some great, tracks on here, guitar work, and he wasn't just copying Hendrix. And it's unfortunate when certain artists have no high opinion of their own work, and then they just continue doing what they were doing before, which is like copying somebody. So that's unfortunate, but this is still considered a classic, and he's still touring, still doing his Hendrix thing. More Canadian rock. This is Harlequin, their first album, not available on CD. You cannot find this album anymore either. They were known more for melodic love songs after this album, but the first album is actually got some really classic, heavier songs, including Sweet Things in Life and Shame, Shame, which were on the radio all the time, and that's why I bought this. That is a typical Hypnosis cover. And they did a lot of bands in the 70s, including Pink Floyd. Wish You Were Here is a Hypnosis cover. UFO albums, they did all of them. And anytime you could not figure out what that meant, the album cover, you pretty well could be assured it was a Hypnosis cover. Now we're getting into my Emmylou Harris collection. So I got a ton of stuff from Emmylou. The Cimarron album. This was 81. This is one of my favorites of hers all time, from Ballad of Sally Rose. This was 80, I think 85? Yes, 85. Later album of hers. Always loved her singing. Elite Hotel. That was 75, so that goes way back. Quarter Moon in a 10-cent Town. This was 78. Luxury Liner, 77. And White Shoes, which was, I think, 83. So these are, again, all in great condition. She has always been one of my favorite singer-songwriters. Next up, we have another Canadian band classic, Headpins, Turn It Loud. This was on the radio all the time, and it's still on the radio all the time. The guitar player, he already died years ago, Brian McLeod. He was also in Chilliwack. The singer was Darby Mills. I think she still does shows and basically plays this album. So again, on the radio all the time. Here's one that probably nobody's ever heard of, Hetherington Rocks. Diane Hetherington. I don't know, I think she even lasted more than one album. This is 1980, and she did a version of Helter Skelter that was on the radio. I do remember that. But other than this, it's kind of like another one of these that went quickly to the delete bin. Here's a classic from an amazing guitarist, Alan Holdsworth. Oh, there goes my camera. It went out. What happened there? It just shuts off in the middle of the thing. How could the battery be dead already? That doesn't make any sense. Okay, it looks like I had an outage there. No idea why. Okay, so where was I? I was talking about Alan Holdsworth. This is one of his classics, Road Games mini album. There was 6 songs on here, and this came out in '84. Guys like Eddie Van Halen, Neil Schon, all huge fans of Alan Holdsworth, and definitely a guy who should have got more acclaim than he did. He was just generally known for jazz fusion rock and didn't get a lot of radio play, but he's influenced all the shredders of the 70s and 80s. I mean, Holdsworth started with a group called Tempest in 1970. He was already doing amazing solos on there that was so far beyond what anybody else was doing, like Hendrix, or who else was big, in 1970. What shredders were there in 1970? That didn't really exist. But Holdsworth would definitely have been the first. That could be, you could apply the term shredder to, using different scales and playing outside the box. I always loved that Tempest album. Here's a double album of Buddy Holly, Rock and Roll Collection. This is, I've had this since I was about 18. And again, it was probably recorded to tape and then filed away. Also loved Buddy Holly. That's music I grew up with, because my dad was playing it. Here's another nice collectible, the London Howlin' Wolf Sessions with Eric Clapton, Steve Winwood, Bill Wyman, and Charlie Watts. This came out in, it says 81. Okay. But some great blues covers on here. And if you're into blues, it's a classic. Here's something called The Cage featuring Nona Hendrix. Why I have this, I don't know. I probably just picked it up on a whim in a delete bin. It's a single. I don't know what year this was. 82. Okay, that goes way back. So now we get on to one of my favorite albums of all time. It's Hughes Thrall. So it's one of the worst album covers, too, of all time. This is Glenn Hughes and Pat Thrall. Glenn Hughes was the singer for Deep Purple starting around the Burn album in '74. So that song, Burn, Stormbringer. Oh, now my view has changed. What's going on here? They switched my resolution, went into widescreen. So yeah, Hughes Thrall. I picked this up in '82. That's the original. And Pat Thrall was a huge influence on me. He was with Pat Travers and, of course, one of my favorite groups of all time, Automatic Man, which I also have the albums from. And he even redid one of the riffs from Automatic Man on this album, on the song Hold Out Your Life. But this, again, wasn't promoted well, and it died a quick death, which is really a shame. This still holds up. Very influential to a lot of musicians, sort of that hidden musician's treasure that everybody talks about. And, probably one of the best things these two artists ever did. I mean, Pat Thrall, he sort of went on to play with other bands like Meat Loaf and Asia, and then he retired because he could see that there was no more money to be made as a musician already. I think in the late 90s, or mid 90s, he was already getting out of the business. So some people were smart and they could see the writing on the wall that no matter how good of a musician you are or were, it would not be paying the bills. And he got into music production for younger artists, rap artists and various others. And he works out of Vegas right now. And he hasn't recorded anything for at least 25 years, which is a real shame because he was just an amazing guitarist. And Glenn Hughes, of course, is still touring and recording, and he's like in his 70s now, still sounds as good as ever. Amazing voice. He's definitely one of my top 3 singers of all time. Him and Paul Rodgers, untouchable, these guys. And Glenn Hughes has even more of a range. Like this guy can do opera if he wants. So, absolute classic album, not available on Spotify. You can't even hear this anywhere unless you were to maybe check it out on YouTube. So, next up is Billy Idol, White Wedding single. Okay, and here's another one that I really enjoyed, and that most people have never heard of. Iron Horse. This is a group from Randy Bachman of BTO, Bachman Turner Overdrive, when he left the band, and this came out in '79. It was played on the radio because there were some songs on here that sounded very similar to things that BTO had done, like Sweet Louise. They used the same stuttering trick of that BTO used on what was their big hit? I can't even think of it now. Oh, you know the one I'm talking about where he's stuttering all the time. But anyway, this was an underrated album, and I think they did 2 albums and never made it on CD. So very rare. I have great memories about that. I have also a Michael Jackson album here. I don't know why I have this. I never bought this at the time. Maybe I got it years later or something. I just probably picked it up really cheap. Thriller. So again, near mint condition. Next we have some classics from, again, one of my favorite guitar players. It's James Gang. First album, Joe Walsh. This is a gatefold. So this came out in the late, I think this was late 60s or 70. Maybe it was their second album. But yeah, it goes way back. And that's an absolute classic. I mean, Joe Walsh later joined the Eagles. And I also have the one with Tommy Bolin, Miami. So after Walsh left the band, Tommy Bolin joined for a few albums. And they were also great. And that's how they did it. They rotated in guitarists in and out of the band just to keep it going. Next I've got Jason and the Scorchers, Lost and Found. They were sort of a country rock band that started off, I think, more country, and then they became more rock. But this goes back to '85. I found them around 1990, I think. I remember buying a cassette of theirs when I was in Germany on my bike trip. And I was really impressed with them. So that is Jason and the Scorchers. Next I have, of course, Jean-Michel Jarre, which I also have a t-shirt, the classic first album, still considered his best work from '76. It's got me into electronic music. And I saw him recently, about 4 years ago, I think, in concert here in Vancouver, and that was great. I played a lot of that. Next I've got classics from Jefferson Starship. This is Freedom at Point Zero. Again, it's a gatefold sleeve. And this was when they didn't have Grace Slick in the band. But they got a hit on the radio with Jane. I have fond memories of hearing that all the time on the radio in '79. And that's why I bought the album. So I ended up picking up a lot of their '70s stuff afterwards. I did get the follow-up album, which was Modern Times. And this is when Grace Slick rejoined the band. Even though she's not in this photo either, but she's on this album. So this is all pre the schmaltzy era when they became, really popular on the radio with We Built This City. This is still sort of in the experimental and heavy rock phase before they went commercial, really commercial. I also have Winds of Change album, which I think we came out in, that was '82. That was after that last album. And then there's also one of my favorites, Nuclear Furniture, which came out in '84. I would say that was the last of the Jefferson Starship albums I could actually listen to. And Grace did some great songs on here, particularly, what was it called? Magician. Absolute classic. Check that out. Next I've got a Billy Joel bootleg here called Souvenir. Now this is some tracks from his studio albums plus live tracks that you couldn't get anywhere else. This came out in '77. So that's very rare, very collectible. And next up, I actually have Journey albums. And this one has a mark on the front. But this was 76. That was during their instrumental phase when they had Greg Rowley on keyboards. He was from Santana. And that is classic instrumental fusion rock. I loved the early Journey, much more than their later period, which would have been, this period when they got Steve Perry on vocals. So this was 1980. So this would have been, no, this was 79. That was the second album with Steve Perry. And that had Love and Touch and Squeezin'. We get into the well-known Journey hits at that period. And then, of course, later on, continuing with Frontiers, also very popular on the radio. And then I have a best of In the Beginning, which is a double album of all their instrumental music compilation. And that came out in, I'm guessing, 79? Yeah. So, all pre-Steve Perry instrumental. Here's another rarity. I had a hard time finding this. Phil Keaggy, The Wind and the Wheat. Now, if you don't know about Phil Keaggy, he's absolutely one of the best guitarists of all time. Electric as well as acoustic. Probably plays even better acoustic now. And, he's kind of associated more with the Christian, what would you say, Christian music. So a lot of people who are into that kind of thing will be listening to him, but, and he sings about God and Jesus a lot. So if you're not into this, you don't want to hear it. And that's what I found was the problem with Phil. When he sticks with instrumentals, which he normally does now, it's great. And I prefer just to hear him play guitar. So this is a classic. It has one of the greatest songs, instrumentals ever on there, The Wind and the Wheat, which I have also done tributes to on YouTube. So this came out, I think, in 78. Or, no, this is actually 87. Yeah. So, and he's still playing, and he still records, still puts out great stuff. Next, I've got a Chaka Khan album here, which was called Naughty. This came out in 1980. Again, Chaka Khan, classic. It's got an inner sleeve with lyrics on it. Here's some memories. Greg Kihn, Next of Kin. I bought this album in 78 because they played the song on the radio called Remember. And that's an absolute classic. I don't think you can even get this. I'm not sure if you can get this on CD, but I do believe it's on Spotify. But this is, again, famous Greg Kihn. When he gotten those... that was that song, They Don't Ride 'Em Like That Anymore. That was a big hit in 81, 82. And he started getting on the radio for those hits. But this is pre-hit Greg Kihn, but still, to me, superior songs. And I even have an earlier album of his called Greg Kihn Again. I don't know if you could actually get away with a cover like that today. I don't think so. This is the 70s, of course. You could get away with whatever you wanted. And now, speaking about, I had Jefferson Starship earlier. This is a solo album from Paul Kantner, who was the guitarist singer of the original Jefferson Airplane and Starship, and he did this album in 1983. He's also not around anymore. I don't know, he died between 5 and 10 years ago. So another one of my favorite guitarists, Ronnie Montrose, is on this album, and he also committed suicide 10 years ago. He suffered from depression. He shot himself. Yeah, that was a really sad way for him to go. Next one up here is the Kinks, the File Series. This is a best of Kinks compilation that I stole when I was 16 from a drugstore that everybody was getting the records from. Some like my friends were going in there, so I was like, I got to try this too because I didn't have money, and I managed to get a few albums, and some of them I still have, like this one. So this is a double album. Again, it's probably been played a couple times. This is a Canadian compilation. So great memories with that. I also had the Kinks low budget album from '79. That was on the radio a lot. Catch Me Now, I'm Falling. Wish I Could Fly Like Superman, classic, low budget. There's at least 3 songs on here on the radio all the time. And then we're going into, K here. This is some German prog rock, Kran, Wiederhorn. And this is 77, German. I can't even remember what this is like. I don't even think I've played it. Next up, we've got a classic from Greg Lake, Emerson, Lake and Palmer. This was a solo album. Gary Moore is all over this album. And that's why I bought it, because Gary Moore. I think Steve Lukather from Toto also all over this album. That was 81. And they followed up in 83 with this album. Also, again, Gary Moore playing some great solos on this. And that's why I picked it up. It's on the Chrysalis label. Then I've got, and we're into L now. Led Zeppelin. This is my last Zeppelin album, In Through the Outdoor. Again, pristine condition with the inner sleeve. I don't have the original paper anymore. I don't think anybody really kept that paper because it was like in a paper bag, so you couldn't see the cover. As there was at least four different covers for this album, and this, of course, got a lot of radio play, and it was kind of looked at as a comeback album for them. Here goes again, another one of my favorite memories from 1980, Alvin Lee Band. I have great memories of listening to this while reading Stephen King's The Shining in my basement room, freaking myself out and listening to good music at the same time. Free Fall. This was, he had a great singer here, and it sounds different than the earlier Alvin Lee 10 years after material. This was a little more radio friendly, but still great guitar work. The whole album is great. I listen to it a lot, and I still love it. And then they followed that up with this R times 5 album. A great cover. This is the same guy who did artwork for Iron Maiden. I think it was. No, maybe not. I'm confusing that with somebody else. John Dyer. Oh, let me see. Wait a second. Derek Riggs. Did Derek Riggs do Iron Maiden? I can't remember. He could have, but this is a great cover and also a great follow-up album. It's the same singer as the last album. So also excellent guitar work. Alvin Lee, of course, also been gone for years. All right, and then we continue with another classic from David Lindley, who I have seen many times. I met him backstage as well when he played the Town Pump here in the mid-'80s. Got to meet him backstage, and we talked about Rory Gallagher. I remember that, and he was a big fan of Rory Gallagher. And who isn't? Rory was also one of my influences growing up in the 70s, for sure. So Lindley did some great albums. He was a great musician, could play many instruments. I mean, that's why he respected guys like Rory Gallagher, who were the same way, could play, mandolin and slide and acoustic guitar as well as electric. So it did a little bit of everything. And David Lindley definitely comes from that same school. Always a highly sought after studio musician. Played on Jackson Browne's Runnin' on Empty. That solo in there is David Lindley. And he had a great live show and a very funny guy too. Also enjoyed musicians with a sense of humor. So then we go into some albums from another one of my favorite guitar players. And he is Nils Lofgren. He's more well known now as the guitarist for Bruce Springsteen for many years. He's been overshadowed by Bruce, but a great songwriter in his own right. I actually prefer him to Bruce Springsteen. I was never a huge fan of Springsteen. again, probably the overplaying of albums like Born in America. What was it? Born in America or Born in the USA? It's just constantly on the radio. I couldn't stand it. Where this guy was, overlooked, and he started with a band called Grin. He played with already with Neil Young in the early '70s, and this was probably considered his best album. I had this on 8-track first in 1979. It had the classic song "No Mercy." He was known for doing backflips on stage, but he had a great run of albums from basically all the way to the '70s to mid '80s, and he still did good albums after that. But I didn't follow him as closely after, say, '84. So that was a classic from '79, and then I have even older albums from him. I Came to Dance. This was '77, I believe. I think you can get that on Spotify. And there's another old one, Cry Tough. He was a huge fan of Keith Richards. He wrote a song about Keith called Keith Don't Go. And that was revolving around the drug arrest he had in like '78. He got arrested in Canada, and then the judge ordered him to do a benefit concert for the blind. I don't know if any of you remember that, but that was the closest that came to the Stones breaking up. Everybody worried that that was it. End of the line for Keith Richards, because he got arrested in Canada on possession. I don't know what it was, if it was just marijuana or they had coke or heroin, something else. I think it could have been heroin, I'm not sure. But anyway, that was a big thing in '78, '79, and then they basically said, okay, he was trying to get off the addiction, and they gave him some leeway and said, you can do a concert for the blind. And Nils wrote that song for Keith. And there's another one, again, very rare, Night Fades Away, 1981. It's got the punch hole in the corner from the delete bin. I mean, he was in the delete bin all the time. Again, here's another classic. I actually love this album, Wonderland. That's probably the last really great album that he did in '83. And I bought this when I was living in Edmonton, so I was, 21 at the time? Still have it. Still love it. And then I got this one too, which is Flip. Oh, there's the pricing on it, 99 cents. This was sort of a hit and miss, a little bit more kind of '80s drum synth, fake drums in it, but still has some good songs, but definitely not the same quality as the earlier albums. I got a tip from Skagit Ed. Thank you very much. Says, never got into collections, but I love your instrumental versions. To me, rotten lyrics are a sad part of music, sad part of life, really. Thanks for sharing. See you on the street. Yeah, well, I agree that if you are not into the lyrics of whoever is singing or the voice, it can totally ruin it for you. That's why I've always preferred instrumental music, because you can write your own stories and you have your own mental imagery to go along with that. You write your own stories. I mean, unless you're some exceptional songwriter like Bob Dylan, it can be really tough sometimes to sit through certain artists and their singing. Either, let's look at a guy like, say, Mark Knopfler from Dire Straits. Here's a guy who should have actually hired a decent singer, because he's not a singer. So if you don't like Mark Knopfler's singing, you're not going to like Dire Straits. There's just no way getting around it. Now, he could write good lyrics, but he can't sing. And he just refuses to have anybody else sing. And in some cases, guys can play guitar and sing, like, say, Rick Medlock from Blackfoot, or Leslie West from Mountain, or Warren Haynes from Government Mule. These are all guys who, amazing guitar players, and also can sing. Even Nils Lofgren, he can sing. So when you get somebody who's like, I can't sing, but I'm going to sing anyway, that really can be irritating. And that's why a lot of, solo stuff from Mark Knopfler, it was ruined for me because of his vocals, or lack of vocals. When you got another singer in the band, like when he did that album with Emmylou Harris, yeah, it sounded way better right away. I mean, my dad absolutely loved that album, and he couldn't care less about Mark Knopfler in general. Okay, he liked some Dire Straits stuff. But once he heard that Emmylou Harris Mark Knopfler album, he was like, fell in love with it, and that's because of her. So That's another reason why I was tended to go for female singers. There are not a lot of male singers that I really like, just a handful. Here's a female singer that was great on the Lone Justice album. This is from '85. What was her name again? Maria Mckee. She went solo, did a couple albums with them, and did some great solo stuff, but she is also long gone. Here's another person that was kind of maligned as being not such a great singer, but I actually kind of like Claudine Longet. She sounds very much of the '60s, and her sort of childlike, innocent voice. And she had a good backup band. It was actually pretty good. Now, this is generally considered her best album, and it is pretty rare. Now, I believe she was involved in a murder trial. Like, she apparently shot her, I don't know if it was her ex-husband or her current husband, but she had to go to court for this in the mid-'70s. It was not sure whether she had intentionally shot him or the gun went off or something, but there was a murder trial, and that was pretty well the end of Claudine Longet's career. Somebody mentioned never thought about Knopfler's voice having to be good, always accepted it, enjoyed it like Dylan. Yeah, well, that's how you have to be in that mood. You have to say, okay, I accept it. And he's not the worst. I can think of other singers that are worse. As far as like Uli Roth from the Scorpions, he released solo albums on his own, and it's just horrendous singing, And Bob Dylan, I don't mind really either, in limited doses. He wasn't too bad in the '60s, at least, and then it got worse over the years. But still, that can be an acquired taste, just like Tom Waits, who also sang better in the earlier years, and then it devolved into a croak. So, if you're in the mood for it, it's fine. Yeah, Keith Don't Go was in '75. Was it really? So why were they talking about this having to do with the arrest? That's weird. Because I seem to remember that story that he did this song as Keith Don't Go to Canada. So why were they talking about this already in '75? I thought that all came out later. But I have to read up more on that. Yes, Skagit, right? Yeah, okay, that's what it is. Yeah, and I said Skagit. Yeah, I don't hear this very often, and I don't think about it. That's probably why. It's like if you don't hear a word for years or you don't think about it, your pronunciation of it can be completely off. I've got like enough things to keep in my head these days. Pronouncing like if I lived there, I probably would get it right. So anyway, Claudine Longet, I bought this off eBay, and I actually paid a bit of money for it because I had read that it was such a great album, and it is probably the pinnacle of her albums. More of a '70s vibe on that. And I still have one of her '60s album here, The Look of Love. I must remember Claudine from that movie, The Party, with Peter Sellers, which was a classic comedy from, I think, '68. And she was the girl singing at the party that Peter Sellers fell for and that he was trying to date, And I distinctly remember her singing in this movie. But she was the love interest of the film, and that always kind of stuck with me. And that's probably why I sought out these albums later on. Again, you have to be in the mood for this. Now we have a classic here. It's an original one that I bought in '84. Classic group, Los Lobos. This was their first album, How Will the Wolf Survive? And they've released many great albums over the years. This one in particular I really liked. They had Tex-Mex, what other Latin influences, Spanish. There's accordion on here. It was very different to hear this on the radio at the time, because most of the time you're just hearing American artists, Canadian artists. So getting some ethnic music on the radio was something you didn't hear very often, and this really stood out. So I remember that, hearing this, like, there's accordion solo in here, it's great. So I've actually covered some of these songs, and I would just copy the accordion solos on guitar. So that was generally considered, I don't know if that's considered their best album or not, but this was 84. And How Will the Wolf Survive song, remember that? Classic. So we're just getting around here to the end of my albums because I'm only going to go up to N. And I'll start off here with Nick Lowe. This is also collectible. This is Nick the Knife from 82. He, of course, great songwriter. Elvis Costello did his songs. He produced a lot of Elvis Costello albums. He was with Rockpile with Dave Edmunds. He did his own solo stuff. In the 70s, that was great. So It Goes. I don't know if any of you remember that song. That was classic. And, you know, he well known as a producer. All right, Skagit Ed. I'll see you later. And thanks for dropping in. So I have two albums from Nick, and this is the other one, The Abominable Showman. And this came out in 83. Again, probably hasn't been played. And then I'll end with my L's with Lena Lovich, eccentric Euro stylist, shall we say. She had that hit song, Lucky Number, which is on this album. That came out in 79? Ooh, 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 ooh. Remember that? So yeah, that was her first album, and that she had a hit with this. She kind of reminds me of coming from the school of singers like, who's that German singer? The weird one. Nina Hagen. She's kind of from the same school. I think they've actually recorded together. You know, kind of quirky, good for a hit or two, and that's it. I mean, people generally don't follow her too long. And she did this album as well, which was called Flex. Yeah, so there, you know, like somebody said, you know, the Lena Lovich might be somebody you couldn't stand listening to either. And I can't remember, I just over that hit, and I've listened to the album a few times, but she's not like going to be like Linda Ronstadt quality. Oh, there goes my resolution changing again. You didn't like Nina Hagen was dreadful? Oh, well, there again, she's done some really interesting stuff that I really like her late 70s work. It was more like a straight rock band. But then she did some really esoteric stuff as well that can be hard to listen to. And, you know, I would find someone like Grace Jones probably more listenable. But I always admire Nina's attitude, which was very punk. She was one of the true punks. And, you know, she didn't care what anybody said. She did her own thing. And I really admired that. We don't get enough of that in music and with artists. Most of them are just towing the line. And she was always, the rebel. And she's still touring as well. I love to see her live. I mean, I'm sure that'd be a great show. You know, like seeing her with Grace Jones on a double bill. I would have enjoyed that. Anyway, so that's it for these albums, which is taking us up to L. So I will continue maybe next week with more, the next 5 letters of the alphabet, and, you know, not try to overwhelm. So again, I'm going to put my list of albums for sale in the link in the description. I'll take you to my Patreon message board where you can see all these albums that I have for sale. So if there's anything you're interested in, you can just email me at shatnershairpiece@yahoo.com. I've already sold a few, and I think I sold my 2 T-Rex albums, and I got another 6 set aside for somebody. But if there's something you're interested in or want to hear more details, then you just can write me, and I can ship them anywhere. Like I say, the shipping cost is about $20 I think probably for 1 to 3 albums, it'll probably be very similar based on weight. So, I ship to the States. I could probably even ship to Europe, but that probably is going to be costing quite a bit more for postage. So I'm slowly going to go through all this. I'm slowly putting things on eBay, but right now the fastest way is just to see that list and then contact me. And then, you can pay through PayPal or do an e-transfer. So like I say, this is all for my personal collection. The reason I am selling, for various reasons. First of all, I don't play them anymore. And so they're just sitting there. And I think it would be better if somebody could actually enjoy them and play them. And second, I need the money. And I need to make room. Just trying to lighten up on things. I'm getting to that age now where I don't see the point of holding on to things forever. I mean, right now my guitars would be my most important things to hold on to, So, but albums, even though they have sentimental value and it can be difficult to sell them for that reason, I'm thinking, well, am I even listening to these anymore? I've already sold so many on eBay 15 years ago. Like probably half my collection already went. Like, Rory Gallagher albums, Stones albums, Blue Oyster Cult albums, Hendrix albums, Led Zeppelin albums. I think I sold everything in lots back then. And so now I'm just continuing to go through the stuff. So I think I have about 500 left, including a lot of soundtracks. So that's also on my list. A lot of actually unplayed soundtracks, some still sealed. So unless you have any more questions, I'll leave it for that. And let's see here if I missed any questions in the chat. So I don't know if there's still a sync issue with this video. It's the first time I went live on here, so I might need some adjustments. So anyway, I'm going to be hitting the street again within a few weeks, once it warms up. And it usually does warm up around the end of March. So I will keep you informed on that. And I'm going to be filming as usual for, recording the jam, comedic purposes, and legal purposes, in case I need it for backup, whether I'm getting assaulted or something like that. Because these things can happen on the street. Have happened to me. Fortunately, sometimes they'd happen to me when I didn't have the GoPro. So I'm going to start that up again. And that'll be interesting because it's been 2.5 years since I've been out there. So I have no idea how much worse it's going to be. People are still on the edge, have been on the edge for 2 years here. And things are not really lightening up here in BC. We're still the only province in Canada that still has mandates going. It's unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. So I've run into psychos, unfortunately. So I really don't know what kind of reaction I'm going to get out there, because people tend to also, little things can set them off, right? So maybe they hear a song and they hear me playing Pink Floyd and they don't like Pink Floyd, and then that's just going to set them off. This has happened to me before, So it's always a crapshoot. It's taking a risk. I know I'm taking a risk. Going out there, people don't have a clue what I go through out there. You really have to be like a turtle. You have to grow a shell very quickly to put up with it, because you're often not going to be appreciated. You're going to be actually sometimes hated and screamed at and swore at and sometimes physically assaulted. Have your money stolen. It's happened to me plenty of times. Dealing with cops, dealing with psychos, drug addicts, drunks, and then you'll have the nice people too, right? I mean, it's a mix. But when you're a musician, you're basically considered you would be like a sensitive artistic type, right? So you're kind of going out there to present yourself, opening up to the public, and you'll find the public often might not be receptive to what you're doing. and some are, and hopefully that the good ones make up for the bad ones. But anyway, I'm going to be keeping a diary of this as usual. You can still get my 2019 diary with a $10 tip on PayPal. It's called The Joys of Busking. And that is a daily account of what I went through out there. So it can be pretty mind-blowing. It's like the good, the bad, and the ugly, where I talked about, the good encounters and the bad encounters out there. So I'm going to continue that this year with the diary. And filmed as usual from the headstock of my guitar. Probably the same general spot there in front of the train station, and that's maybe sometime I will try also Robson and Burrard corner and see how it goes there. Love your busking videos. Can't believe what jerks people can be out there. Yes, that's the number one comment I get on my busking videos is, how can these people ignore you? Well, there's a guy named Paul who has written me about this psychological perspective, and he actually teaches a class in a university in the States, kind of concerning the people who I deal with out there and why they are like that. He sent me a long letter about this, and it was quite interesting to read it. I'd never seen such a detailed breakdown of the whole tribe aspect and psychological aspects of people. I think his view was generally something like people don't like to react because it sets them apart from the tribe of which they so much want to be a part of. It's the same idea like mass formation psychosis. People don't like to stand out from what their friends or other people do. They would much rather do what they do to be accepted, and to admit to like something like a street musician or to dance or to show joy would put you outside of this group of your tribe that is not doing that. There was a lot more detail he went into. And he's actually showing my videos to his classmates, to his students, and they're talking about this, which is really interesting to me. My idea theory is more about people generally are much more self-centered these days. This has been going on for years. It's an iPhone world, right? Everybody's got their phone. So if people could see me live or they see me on their phone simultaneously, they will choose the phone because that is more real to them. That means something. And I think that's part of the reason why people on YouTube appreciate me more, because it is on YouTube. It is a video. It's like, oh, he's on video. That has some kind of meaning, as opposed to just seeing me live. That really doesn't have much meaning for a lot of people anymore. It's like, it's real life. It's happening in the moment. Why should I care about that? I'd rather watch this later in the comfort of my home in my own time. That has value. So there's that side of things where people just do not connect with what's going on around them anymore. They're too self-involved. Or they are, there can be jealousy. I've had plenty of guitar players walk past me carrying guitars and they don't even look at me, which I find amazing, because normally if I was a guitar player and you had an interest in the instrument, I would actually look at somebody else who was playing guitar, especially if they were playing it well. I'm not a 3-month guitar player out in the street struggling to play a song. I've been playing for almost 50 years. So that I found quite amazing. So somebody explained that to me, how you can be a guitar player carrying around your guitar and you don't even look at a guy who's playing on the street. It's almost like, well, what, are they insulted by that? Is it like beneath them to look? I find this attitude amazing too. A lot of people don't respond. It's like they see me as a bum or a street person. Oh, he's on the street. He can't be any good if he's on the street, even though my ears should be telling me a different thing, like that it is good, but that doesn't mesh, because he can't be good if he's on the street. He's got a bag in front of him with a coin tin collecting. He maybe he's a drug addict or a drunk. I don't have any respect for that. Get a real job. How many times I've heard that? I still hear that today on YouTube comments, people will say, "Get a real job." It's the most hilarious thing ever. Um, so you have that to fight. That whole idea that some people don't respect street musicians. They just see them as bums or losers, right? And then you'll have older people who do appreciate. It's always the very young or the much older that appreciate. The ones in the middle, no, this is all mass formation psychosis. They don't have time for this. They're too busy thinking about other things. But the older people still appreciate, or they grew up with live music, so they connect with it, and they become more like children again. They're willing to dance in front of strangers. Grandma's dancing with me for 20 minutes. Most younger people do not dare to do this. Unless they're 4 or 5 years old, then they'll still do it. They haven't been indoctrinated into society yet and holding in their emotions. So that is what I experienced, the young and the old enjoying it, and occasionally some in the middle, but not that much. So what is somebody saying here? Yeah, Nina Hagen was married with Herman Brood. Yes, I remember that. I had that album from Herman Brood. He was also a heroin addict. I think they both were at the time. Am I going to wear a mask out there? No. I'm not wearing a mask. I've never worn a mask. I've never put up with any of this for over 2 years. And that is not going to happen. I mean, I'm outside for one thing. It's just the reaction that I can expect from some of the other psychotics that might be concerning to me is how other people might react. Like, are they going to get aggressive, on the street that they're walking by me, So we'll see. But any chance of posting your maid's psychological letter? I don't know what that means. Psychological letter? So I'm going to be out there as I am usually. So, I'm probably going to try to keep it to 2 hours and go through some new tracks. I'm going to try some new things and see how they work and experiment as usual. Because some things work and other things don't. I'll probably stick with my usual classics that I play. ZZ Top, LaGrange, Baker Street from Jerry Rafferty, some Pink Floyd, things that I can jam on that still work and generally get a reaction. So it's hard to find consistent things. I experimented a lot over the last few years, and a lot of these songs I won't try again because they just don't get a reaction. I used to play like old Cher songs from the early 70s, Gypsies, Tramps, and Thieves, which I love, but most people don't recognize anymore. So it's going to be a little more jam-based this time because I want to avoid YouTube copyrights. If you do too much note-for-note covers, they get found out, copyrighted by YouTube, and then I'm not making any revenue on them. Because I am getting a little bit of ad revenue from YouTube now. So, if you see the 6-second ad, let it run because I might get a couple cents out of it. So yeah, I'm using the same amplifier out there, my 50-watt trainer, which they don't make anymore, and I'll be bringing my wah pedal and my Zen drive, overdrive, and that'll be it. So, Santana again works. I'll still be doing Santana. So I'm just going to now, in the next few weeks, figure out what to add and try to keep it more jam-based. So I have these videos to put up that are like, oh, I've not seen this before, and it's a jam, and it won't get copyrighted. Like Baker Street is another one where, if I put up the full cover of the song, it will get copyrighted. But if I stick with just the jam section, I should be okay. So I'll keep you posted on when that's going to happen. But once it hits around 12 degrees, 12 to 15, it should be all right, and my hands won't freeze. I'll be continuing to play blues as well. I'll get some more blues jams going. So, I'm still not through my old jams from years ago. I'm still posting a lot of stuff from way back to 2000, 16. I still got 2016, 17, 19 videos as well. So I'm going to keep putting those up and rotating with my band videos from my live gigs, which have also ended years ago. I don't know, a lot of you are not aware that I do not play gigs anymore since like 2018 was my last gig with duos, and most of the clubs have shut down now. So I'm basically, if I want to be in public, I'm forced to play the street. I can't really get gigs anymore. So bands are sort of out of the question. It's a lot of work. I did a lot of work over 15 years, getting bands together, rehearsing, doing all the grunge work, talking to managers, emailing managers, phoning managers, convincing them about my bands. Nobody else lifted a finger to help with this, ever. I did all the videos, I did all the promo, I did the posters, I did the audio recordings, everything to put up on YouTube later to show people, like, here's the band. I did all of it, and it can be really exhausting. And then on top of that, you're dealing with a lot of flaky musicians. For me, it was mostly singers. A constant hamster wheel of singers. Some great, some not so great. But dealing with, personality clashes and people that didn't have money, they couldn't afford to even rehearse. People that didn't like the band jamming, taking a guitar solo. I have to feel bad because I'm taking a guitar solo. No, that wasn't for me anymore. Or they'd stare at the ceiling while the band jams. Like, seriously? So I always had this problem with singers where I was doing a lot of, what's the word? Making concessions for them. Okay, I will play your Adele song if you do this. So I'd be often forced to play songs I had absolutely no interest in. And that really is, you don't want to be on stage when you're playing music you have no feeling for. That is absolutely the worst. And you should avoid it. I mean, any advice I can give to anybody who's starting out as a musician is only play what you like. Don't think about making it. That is, again, like playing the lottery. Your number one motivation should be, am I enjoying what am I doing, and would I do it without any money or anyone watching? That's what you have to focus on. It's like, what are you going to do if you're sitting in a jail cell, with your guitar? Well, you're going to be playing for yourself. So you better enjoy what you're doing. And that's always been my motivation too. And, a lot of times I got away with this in bands because I had a singer that was right, that would do material that I liked and was open to different things. Maybe, 3 or 4 singers I had like this. But a lot of it was constant turnover of singers that were, and they'd have to relearn another set for another singer, and it was constant working out these songs. So I just went instrumental after a few years of that to get some jam space and really enjoy just interacting as a, drummer, bass, and guitar, and not have to think about singers and vocals coming in. Of course, a lot of venues would rather have a singer, but we did get gigs as an instrumental band. We're one of the few instrumental bands I had that actually got work. And again, there was a lot of work to get these gigs. You had to fight an even stronger current against you because most bands were like, where's your singer? And you had to fight to get in to do instrumentals. So I'd play like a surf bar and just do surf instrumentals, anything I could dig up. So that was a lot of work, and I got fed up with it. And a lot of the relief was playing on the street to get away from all that hassle of, also playing late at night. I never really enjoyed starting gigs at 9 o'clock at night. I was like ready to sleep. So I'd stay awake and stay up till 1. And by the time you got home, it was 2 in the morning. And, and then driving there, the expense, and all these things coming together just for one weekend gig, and maybe you only got this every month or every 3 months. So a lot of upkeep behind the scenes, rehearsal time, expenses, just crazy. So it's it's great if it works, where you have an audience that appreciates you, but that often didn't happen either. It could be just hardly anybody there, or people are too busy talking to pay any attention to the band. Sometimes I got more attention on the street. So the street became preferable in a lot of ways because I got to play what I wanted to play. I could jam as long as I wanted to. If I felt like playing a song for 15, 20 minutes, I could do it. And I might say, well, okay, I'm not going to get paid because I'm jamming, but I didn't care because I was having a good time. And sometimes people would respond to this. They would respond to the jam, and that was the best. It's like I'd be jamming, doing my thing, getting into it, and other people would connect with that. You know, I played Light My Fire jam for an hour, and people actually enjoyed it. So that's something else I'll probably do again. I'll jam to the Doors. You got to hit the sweet spot of making yourself happy and also trying to make a connection with people. And sometimes, you know, if you just do a straight cover, you might make somebody happy, but you don't make yourself happy. So you have to find that balance. And then, you know, as far as getting connections out there, I handed out hundreds of business cards. I don't think I ever got a phone call from anybody. So that didn't really work. So that's what my approach to being on the street. And Bert asked if I ever do any Allman Brothers. Yes, I played Ramblin' Man. It went absolutely nowhere. I probably will never do that again. It's not my favorite anyway. I did Jessica a few times. I probably will try that again. Again, it gets copyrighted by YouTube, so I'd have to edit it out, the first part, the recognizable structure of the song, and leave it to the jam. And I'll probably throw in some more Allman Brothers this time. Maybe I'll do Whipping Post, or try to find something where I can do more of a jam. So that definitely will be in there. Yeah, Jan is saying at the bus stop. Yeah, that'll probably be my main spot again, down by the SkyTrain station, as usual, near that bus stop. That's where I've been for the last few years. So, and then the only other spot is a few blocks away, Robson and Burrard, and I might try that as well, just for a change. But I'll keep you updated. So anyway, let's leave it at that, and I'll get another video going on more of my record collection, maybe next week. I'll leave it on a Monday or something. So I want to thank everybody for joining and listening to my record memories. Always fun to go through this stuff and talk about it, and what's coming for the future. So right now, at least, the days are getting longer, and I'm happy to see some sunlight returning, and getting my street songs together again. It's going to be a bit weird in the beginning, but hopefully I'll get into the groove quickly. All right. So thanks for watching, and I'll talk to everybody again probably next week. All right. Take care.